He wasn't supposed to be noticed. Janitors weren't meant to be seen, only heard in the quiet swish of mop water or the distant clatter of carts behind closed doors. That's how Adam Weiss had kept his job, by disappearing. Invisible in blue coveralls, gray sneakers, name badge half scratched off. But that morning, silence broke not with a bang, but with a sound that didn't belong anywhere in a building like this. A scream not high-pitched or theatrical, but deep, ragged, animal. It echoed through the open-air lobby and froze every executive mid-stride. Adam dropped his squeegee on reflex. In the middle of the atrium, where white floors met colder walls, a young girl had collapsed into herself. Knees tucked in, fists clenched against her ears, blonde hair spilling like static. She wasn't crying. She wasn't speaking. She was shaking. Around her, 3 assistants clutched clipboards like shields, and 1 security guard stood helplessly nearby, murmuring into his walkie. "Crisis," someone whispered. "Where the hell is her caretaker?" The girl's eyes darted rapidly, not seeing people, just shadows. Every motion around her was too fast, too loud, too much. And Adam, still holding a grimy bucket of window cleaner, was the only one moving closer. "Sir, don't," the guard barked, stepping in front of him. "That's the Koenig girl. If you so much as speak to her wrong, you're fired. We had an incident last week. Big deal." Adam didn't answer. He didn't even look at the man. He just crouched slowly 8, maybe 10 feet away, and pulled a small plastic bottle from his inner pocket. A cheap party store item. Soap bubbles. His daughter had once called them the only thing louder than fear. He dipped the wand silently, tilted his head, and blew. 1 bubble floated. Then 2. Then a fragile ribbon of color drifted toward the center of the chaos. The girl's rocking slowed. Her fists unclenched. She watched the bubbles like she wanted to inhale them. Adam didn't move any closer, didn't speak, didn't look at her. He just kept blowing. The space around them shifted. Not the people, the air. Something fragile cracked open. The girl, still silent, extended 1 hand toward the floating shimmer, and for the first time since the scream, the silence in the room wasn't frightening. It was still. A controlled, precious kind of still. Above them, in the tinted glass mezzanine office no one was ever allowed to speak about, a woman in black stood frozen, her reflection warping in the glass. Isabel Koenig had ended multi-million-dollar negotiations with a single phone call. She had survived scandal, lawsuits, and even a boardroom betrayal that made national headlines. But she had never felt as helpless as she did now, watching her daughter be calmed not by a therapist, not by medicine, but by a janitor and soap bubbles. Her heels clicked once as she turned from the glass and walked away. 10 minutes later, the elevator door opened in the lobby. "Mr. Weiss," she said sharply. Adam turned slowly. "Ma'am." She nodded toward the lift. "Upstairs. Now." Behind them, the girl Ella whispered 1 word that neither of them heard. Again, the elevator ride was quiet. Not polite, quiet, heavy quiet. Isabel Koenig didn't make small talk, and Adam Weiss knew better than to fill silence that didn't belong to him. Her presence had the gravity of someone who built empires and buried enemies without ever raising her voice. As they rose past glass floors and abstract art, Adam noticed her jaw was tight, her posture rigid, but her eyes kept flicking to the reflection of the lobby below. "You calmed her," she said finally, like it was an accusation. "I didn't do anything," Adam replied. "Exactly," Isabel said. And it worked. Her office was too clean, the kind of place where no one ever sat too long or dared to breathe wrong. She gestured toward a chair, but didn't wait for him to sit. "You used to teach." Adam blinked. She didn't ask, she stated. "Special education, 11 years, he confirmed. "Before." Isabel folded her arms. "Before what?" Adam hesitated. Then, "Before grief taught me I couldn't fix everything." She didn't flinch, but something behind her eyes shifted. "Ella hasn't let anyone touch her in 8 months. Hasn't made eye contact in nearly 4. Do you know what her doctors call her?" "Labels," Adam said dryly. "They're good at those." Isabel's lips pressed together. And yet 1 man with a mop and a bubble wand managed more than 10 specialists. "I didn't come here to be a case study," Adam said. "Then don't be," Isabel replied sharply. "Be a solution." She moved to the floor-to-ceiling window behind her and stared out like she was watching the world fall apart. "Twice a week. Sessions with Ella. No cameras. No board interference. No interviews." Adam raised an eyebrow. You're serious? I'm desperate, she said, and I'm done pretending money can buy what she actually needs. Adam stood. Then let's be clear, I don't work for you. I work with her. If anyone else is in the room, I walk. Isabel nodded. Deal. There was no handshake, just a tension in the air like a fuse had been lit. 3 days later, Adam walked through the sliding glass doors of her penthouse apartment carrying only a sketchbook, a pack of soft crayons, and a half-empty thermos of chamomile tea. The marble floors gleamed. The walls were too white. The silence was rehearsed. She's in her room, Isabel said flatly. No nanny, no staff, just me. Adam scanned the space, then looked down at the girl beside him, his own daughter, Mia. You okay to wait here? He asked. Mia nodded and settled quietly on the plush rug, pulling a dog-eared book from her backpack. Is she scared? She whispered. She's learning, Adam replied. Learning how to breathe again. Ella's room was more like a museum. Not a toy out of place. Not a smudge on the mirror. And in the corner, sitting cross-legged by the window, was the girl herself. Motionless. Watching clouds. Adam didn't speak. He sat 10 feet away, opened his sketchbook, and began to draw a girl with headphones under a rain of colors. After 5 minutes, he gently tore the page and placed it on the carpet between them. No eye contact. No invitation. And yet, Ella stood, walked slowly, picked up the page. Then, shockingly, she sat beside him. Not close, but beside. Isabel watched through the barely opened door, her hand pressed to her chest like she was holding in her own breath. Then a shadow moved in the hallway behind her. Not Mia, not staff, a tall figure in a suit. Watching her, there was attention to luxury that most people missed. In expensive places, silence didn't mean peace, it meant control. That was the first thing Adam noticed as he stepped further into the penthouse. Everything was curated, from the way the sunlight hit the wall-sized windows to the precise placement of a single orchid on the glass table. No clutter, no comfort. It was the kind of space that whispered, "You're not allowed to breathe too loud here." And yet, in the middle of that surgical calm, a girl had drawn a crooked sun in crayon blue, not yellow, on a torn piece of paper, and laid it flat on the floor between herself and a stranger. Adam said nothing. His pencil moved softly across the sketchpad as Ella watched from the corner of her eye. He didn't try to pull her in. He just stayed still. Mia, down the hall, hummed to herself as she colored on the floor, like she belonged there. Maybe she did. Isabel sat on the edge of a bar stool in the kitchen, watching both girls with the practiced caution of someone who had built walls so high she couldn't remember what was on the other side. How long have you had Mia on your own? She asked without looking at Adam. Since her mom passed, he replied, tone even. 3 years. Isabel's fingers curled slightly around her tea mug. And you still took a janitor job? Needed to be invisible for a while, he said. Turns out buildings don't judge you when you clean them. But it wasn't Isabel's question that shifted the mood. It was the knock. 3 short taps, then a pause. Not staff. Not delivery. Not the nanny. Isabel froze for a second too long before heading to the door. When she opened it, her spine stiffened like a reflex. In stepped a man dressed in a blazer too sharp for casual and a smile too smooth to be sincere. Isabel, he said with a voice that belonged in conference calls and courtrooms. I was in the area. Adam looked up as the man entered, tall, tailored, eyes too quick. Isabel didn't greet him. This isn't a good time, David. David Koenig, Ella's father. Mia peeked out from the hallway, sensing the air shift. David looked at the sketchpad on the floor, then at Adam. And who's this? The person who got Ella to draw something for the first time in a year. Isabel snapped before Adam could answer. David's smirk faltered. You're letting a stranger work with her unsupervised? He said, tone twisting into legal precision. Does your board know? The board doesn't raise my daughter, she replied. And frankly, neither do you. The words hung like ice in the air. Ella, still seated on the floor, had turned her face slightly toward the noise. Adam noticed her hand flinch. He gently picked up the sketch and folded it, setting it down beside her. I think we're done for today, he said softly. He walked toward Mia, reaching out to take her hand. But Ella's voice stopped him. One word. Quiet, fragile, but unmistakably clear. Stay. The entire room froze. Isabel's breath caught. David blinked, like he didn't believe what he'd heard. Mia smiled, eyes wide. Adam turned. Ella was looking directly at him, really looking. Her small fingers gripped the edge of the sketch pad like it was the only solid thing in the room. But David's smile returned, colder this time. "Well, isn't this cozy?" he said. "We'll see how cozy it feels when custody becomes a conversation again." Then he turned on his heel and walked out without waiting for a response. Isabel stood frozen for a beat, then sat down hard at the kitchen island, hands trembling. Adam looked at her. "How often does he do that?" She whispered, "Just enough to stay dangerous. They say progress isn't linear, but no one warns you how fast it can unravel." 2 weeks after Ella whispered stay, things had shifted. She didn't speak again, not with words, but something in her changed. Her drawings became bolder. She started choosing her own colors. Blue still dominated, but yellow had appeared small dots, tiny rays tucked into corners like secrets only she could see. Mia and Ella now sat side by side during sessions, exchanging crayons without a word. Adam didn't push. He didn't praise. He just showed up, day after day, with the same calm breath and steady hands. It was working. Isabel was starting to believe in something dangerous, hope. But hope doesn't sit quietly forever, not when power is watching. Isabel's phone buzzed constantly now. Anonymous emails, board meetings called with no agenda, PR concerns about a custodian with no credentials spending unverified time with her daughter. She recognized the pattern. This wasn't about Ella. It was about control. David had started making moves behind the scenes, whispers through lawyers, veiled legal threats, a leaked photo of Adam kneeling beside Ella's crayon sketch. The caption had been cruel. CEO or single mom in crisis. Koenig prioritizes janitor over child's well-being. The comments were worse. Isabel didn't sleep that night. The next morning, she found Mia in the kitchen, pouring juice for Ella like they'd done it for years. "What happens if the world thinks I'm unfit?" Isabel asked Adam later that evening as they sat on the balcony, watching both girls press stickers onto the sliding glass doors. "Then the world is wrong," Adam said simply. "They don't see what happens when no one's filming." Isabel's jaw clenched. David's threatening custody. Again, he's saying you're unstable, that I've brought a stranger into my daughter's life without oversight. Adam was quiet for a beat. "Do you want me to step back?" She looked at him sharply. "No, that's exactly what he wants. He doesn't want Ella safe. He wants her proof that I can't do this." Adam nodded. "Then we make sure she's more than a headline." The next session should have been simple. Bubbles, music, drawing. But Ella was different that day, eyes darting, fingers twitching. When Adam placed a blue crayon in front of her, she didn't touch it. Mia leaned in gently and whispered, "Want to draw with me?" Ella flinched. Not violently, just enough. Then she pushed the sketchbook off the table. Her breathing quickened. Adam recognized the signs. Too much pressure. Something had shifted. "It's okay," he said softly. "We don't have to draw today." But Ella stood suddenly, walked to the corner of the room, and curled into herself. Just like the first day. Isabel watched from the doorway, frozen. "I thought we were past this," she whispered. Adam shook his head. "Healing doesn't move in straight lines. It breathes. And right now, she's holding her breath." That night, while Isabel sat at the dining table staring at her tablet, a call came in. No ID, no ringtone, just a flicker of her screen. She tapped the answer button. Silence. Then a voice, smooth, calculated. "You've got one shot left before I take everything." She didn't need to ask who it was. David didn't bluff. The line went dead. She stood, shaking, and walked to Ella's room. Both girls were asleep, Mia's hand resting gently over Ella's. Isabel sat on the floor and whispered, "I don't know how to protect you from a world that punishes softness." Just then, her tablet buzzed. It was a media outlet. A leak. A photo. Not of Adam. Not of Ella. Of Isabel. In the garden. Laughing. Beside Adam. And the headline burned like a match across her screen. Koenig's collapse. Is the empire crumbling behind closed doors? The air in the building changed before Isabel even stepped inside. People didn't greet her. Eyes darted. Conversations hushed. She'd survived corporate betrayal before takeovers, coups, whisper campaigns, but never one fueled by something so intimate. They weren't attacking her leadership. They were attacking her motherhood. The leaked photo had done more damage than expected. Not because she was laughing, not because Adam stood beside her, but because, for the first time, she didn't look like a CEO. She looked human, vulnerable, real. And to the board, that was unforgivable. In their world, softness was risk. Connection was liability. Her assistant didn't meet her eyes as she handed over the board's letter, an emergency ethics review. The wording was clinical, but the intent was clear. Isabel Koenig was being prepped for removal. That night, she sat in her kitchen, the letter on the counter, a glass of untouched wine beside it. Mia sat quietly at the island, coloring next to Ella, who still hadn't spoken since her moment of collapse. Adam arrived late, eyes tired. "They're freezing my access," he said quietly. "Cleared my locker. Said the optics are too dangerous." Isabel blinked. "Did you fight it?" He shook his head. "You shouldn't have to fight a machine. You change it, or you leave it behind." For a moment, she hated how calm he was, and envied it too. Ella suddenly rose from the table. Slowly, deliberately, she walked to the hallway, past Adam, and into the garden room, a space they hadn't used in weeks. Isabel followed silently, Mia and Adam behind her. Ella stopped in front of the glass mural wall, once pristine, now slightly faded from dust and sun. She looked at the shelf beside it. Her tiny hand reached for the bubble wand. No one breathed. She dipped it in the old soap solution without a word, raised it to her lips, and blew. One bubble, then another. Then, she said a word. Loud, clear, firm. Blue. Adam's hand gripped the back of a chair. Isabel stepped forward slowly, careful not to startle her. "Blue again?" she asked. Ella nodded, then looked at her mother. Looked, not glanced. "You forgot," she said. "You used to paint blue." Isabel froze. "How do you know that?" Ella stepped closer, then whispered, "I remember the smell. Your hands." Adam felt the weight in the room shift. A door, once sealed, was cracking open. Mia reached for Ella's hand. "I like blue too," she said. Ella smiled barely, but enough. Then she added something no one expected. "But now I want yellow." The room fell completely still. Adam looked at Isabel, who whispered, "Yellow?" Ella nodded. "It means brave." That word hung in the air like a bell in a cathedral. Brave. The next morning, Isabel called a press conference. She wore no makeup, no jewelry, just a simple slate gray blouse and her daughter's bubble wand in her hand. The crowd buzzed, confused. Cameras clicked. Adam stood behind the curtain, watching. She stepped to the podium, looked out, and said, "I've been asked to explain my choices, to defend softness, to quantify a janitor's kindness and a child's silence. But I won't." Reporters stilled. Because leadership isn't a performance, and motherhood isn't a brand. It's blue, it's yellow, it's messy, and it's mine. That would have been enough. But then, as she stepped away from the podium, someone called out loud, firm and cruel, "Then step down and let real executives lead." A voice she recognized. From the board. From David. She turned and smiled. Gladly. Gasps erupted. She handed her resignation envelope to the press, turned, and walked straight into Adam's arms. Rain fell softly the morning they opened the doors, not a storm, not a drizzle, just enough to remind the earth it was alive. The new center didn't have a grand name. The plaque outside simply read, "The listening room, no titles. No uniforms. No gates. Just an old, brick building reborn with color-washed windows and wildflowers at the steps." Inside, instead of desks, there were cushions. Instead of rules, rhythms. And in the main room, a wall-sized mural painted by dozens of tiny hands over weeks of quiet afternoons. Swirls of blue and streaks of yellow, dotted with fingerprints and secret crayon stars. At the center of it all stood a girl with her hand pressed flat to the paint. Ella, no longer curled in corners or hiding in silence. She stood tall, quiet, yes but not afraid. Isabel watched from the side, arms crossed gently, not in defense, but in reverence. Her blazer was gone. Her phone was off. Her eyes were open. She wasn't former CEO Isabel Koenig anymore. She was just Ella's mother. Present, uneven, brave. Beside her, Adam adjusted a hand-painted sign Mia had hung the night before. "No one is broken here. Just learning a new language." He smiled at it like it was scripture. Mia darted past him carrying 2 mugs of tea and a box of markers. "She's ready," she whispered. "For what?" Isabel asked. Mia shrugged. "To talk. Maybe not with words, but with her colors." And then, almost prophetically, Ella stepped into the circle at the center of the room where the other children sat waiting, some humming, some tapping their feet, all different, none alone. She didn't start with words. She knelt, picked up a piece of white paper, and uncapped a blue marker. Her strokes were slow, deliberate. Then she added yellow bolder than ever. Then red, orange, green. A rainbow built by a girl who once couldn't bear the sound of her own name. Finally, she stood up, turned to the group, and whispered, "This is how I speak." No one clapped. No one cheered. But every child nodded, because they understood. One of the boys scooted closer and handed her a purple crayon. Ella smiled. Isabel's hands trembled. "She's leading," she whispered. Adam leaned in. "She always was. We just finally got out of the way." Later that evening, as the last families filtered out and the sun cast golden slants through the old glass, the four of them, Adam, Isabel, Mia, and Ella, sat on the floor eating cold slices of pizza off mismatched paper plates. Music played softly from a speaker in the corner. Not classical, not curated, just gentle, honest. "You really built this," Isabel said, scanning the room. "No," Adam replied. "She did." He nodded at Ella, who was now showing Mia how to fold a paper star. "I just listened." Isabel was quiet for a long time. "Then, when I first met you, I thought you were just temporary. A phase." Adam smiled faintly. "I know. But you were the first thing I didn't try to control," she added, almost like a confession. And maybe that's why it worked. As night fell, they moved to the rooftop, just the four of them. The city lights below twinkled like fireflies. Mia leaned into Adam's shoulder. Ella held Isabel's hand. There were no labels, no announcements, no "are we" or "what are we?" Just presence, just breath. Then Ella stood up, walked to the edge of the rooftop, and raised her arms as if greeting the sky. "Tomorrow," she said clearly, "I want to paint clouds, but yellow ones, so they're not sad anymore." Isabel covered her mouth, holding in a laugh and a sob at the same time. Adam walked to Ella and crouched beside her. "Why yellow?" he asked gently. Ella looked at him and answered, "Because yellow means brave. And I think the sky deserves that, too." The final scene was simple. No music swell, no slow motion. Just a snapshot burned into memory, a rooftop, a tired man who never stopped kneeling, a woman who finally learned to sit still, two girls who rewrote silence together, and a wall inside a building filled with handprints, crayon stars, and one phrase written by a child who once couldn't speak. We don't need fixing, just someone to stay. If this story made you feel something, even just for a moment, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a heart. Share where you're watching from. And if you want more stories that speak softly but stay with you, subscribe. We're here, quietly but always.